Today, we are talking about something that affects far more women than we often realize: life after breast cancer and the choices that women have when it comes to reconstruction. My guest is Dr. Evan Garfein. He is a board certified plastic and reconstructive surgeon, chief of plastic surgery at Montefiore Medical Center, and co founder of Greenwich Street Aesthetics in New York City. He has authored more than 60 publications, holds multiple patents, and he helped to write a New York state law to improve access to breast reconstruction. But what really stands out is his passion for making sure that every woman understands her options, because so many don't, even though we have laws that are in existence to help. So today we're going to talk about what has changed, what hasn't, and the new innovations that are helping women reclaim their confidence and sense of wholeness after mastectomy. Dr. Evan Garfein, so great to have you on Over 50 and Flourishing. Dr. Garfein, it's really good to have you on Over 50 and Flourishing. And I'm honestly so grateful that we're having this conversation, albeit, sometimes sensitive in nature, but something that really needs to be discussed. I don't know if you know, but I'm a retired news anchor for, 30 years. And I've done a lot of stories on women who have been through breast cancer, different types of breast cancer. And, the conversation always does lead to reconstruction. What does that look like? What the options are? And, you have been an advocate in this area for women. So, first of all, I want to just kind of talk to you about this passion of yours and how did all of this start?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your show and to talk to your viewers. It's something I am passionate about. I think it's
Mhm.
super important. I think breast reconstruction is the reason why I became a plastic surgeon. I
Mhm.
went to residency thinking I was going to be a cardiac surgeon, and uh, that was sort of my track. And I was on a service early on in my training with a plastic surgeon, and I had never seen breast reconstruction before, and I thought it was just an amazing operation that's really transformative. And from that day forward, I realized that this is sort of what I want to do.
Yeah, what was it in particular? I mean, there are so many different aspects of reconstructive surgery. This is the one area that women always talk about: their sense of femininity, their sense of connection to either their former self or the self that they want to be. Was it that pull, or I'm just curious, what was it for you?
Well, I think surgery is a very intense sport. All kinds of
Mm,
surgery, and most of the time, um, in most types of surgery, you're either removing something that shouldn't be there, or repairing something that's damaged, and that's great, and it's really exciting, and I think it's beautiful. I think the aesthetic of surgery is really really beautiful. I think the anatomy is amazing, and so all types of surgery I think are rewarding, but there's something really special about plastic surgery and reconstruction. And I don't think there's any area where that's better exemplified than breast reconstruction. And
mhm.
and that my index patient, that patient that morning, I hadn't met her pre-op because I wasn't supposed to. I was actually on the breast cancer service, and I stayed for the reconstructive part, and so I had never met her. And when I went around on her the next morning, it was 5:15, and she was asleep, and I crept into the room, and the lights were still out, and I just wanted to check her drains and make sure she was doing
Mhm.
okay. And she woke up, and her first look, and it was a totally subconscious response, which was very powerful. She looked down and saw that she had, in essence, had breasts still,
Mm.
and the look of sort of relief on her face was profound. And so um, that particular reconstruction, it was in 1999, and it was a type we don't do much anymore. It was with the back muscles, the latissimus dorsi flaps, and implants. And now I think we have better ways of doing it, but even then, it was a really powerful technique, and obviously had a big impact on me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's traumatizing enough for a woman to go through breast cancer.
Yeah.
You're questioning whether you're going to be around. So, generally that factors into decision making. A woman will do anything to be able to have her life, and if that means the mastectomy, then so be it. But it's fascinating to me the evolution of that because once upon a time, women couldn't choose anything post mastectomy. I mean, there was no reconstruction. So, and you touched upon a technique that is no longer there, using the back muscle. I'm so curious about the evolution of reconstruction post mastectomy because it's very different than a woman who just chooses to go in and get augmentation. I mean, you're technically having to reconstruct a breast.
Yeah. So, Dominique, one of the great things about this area, I had a teacher in training who said that cosmetic or aesthetic surgery and reconstructive surgery are two sides of the same coin, and we shouldn't think about them differently. And I think that's very true. And I'm a little biased because I still do a lot of reconstruction and I still do a lot of aesthetics. And I think that's great and advantageous to both populations of people. I think in order to be a really good aesthetic surgeon, you really need to know how the body's put together and be well versed in reconstruction and vice versa. And so I think they're sort of interchangeable. And so when you talk about my approach to cosmetic breast augmentation and my approach to breast reconstruction, there's a lot of similarities in those two types of procedures. You're trying to make an attractive, symmetric breast mound and then have the nipple in the right position and have the shape be right and the texture and the feel of the entire breast be something that either looks better or back to normal. And so I don't draw a really sharp distinction between those. A lot of the principles that we use in cosmetic surgery I use when I do reconstruction and vice versa.
Right. You mentioned, I know that with reconstruction, there's an option to go below the muscle, above the muscle. With the reconstruction post mastectomy, you were talking about having to get tissue for muscle itself, because I guess in a mastectomy, muscle can be removed. Is that correct? So doesn't that complicate things a little bit more?
Well, so the basic principles of any reconstruction is we like to replace like with like, right?
Hmm.
And so if you're reconstructing the nose or you're reconstructing the jaw or you're reconstructing the hand, anything, you try to think, okay, well, what's missing and what are my options for replacing that, right? And so when a woman undergoes a mastectomy, what you're missing is maybe some skin, although sometimes now very little skin or no skin in a nipple sparing or skin sparing mastectomy. But really, what you're missing most is the breast parenchyma, is the tissue, the glandular breast tissue, and the subcutaneous fat that make up the breast mound. And so, fortunately, we have lots of options for replacements. So you can use skin and fat from the abdomen or from the thigh or from the buttock or from the back. And the reason we take muscle from the back, or we used to, and there are women who still undergo this operation today, either their plastic surgeon was trained 30 or 40 years ago and that's the way he's always done it, and it's still a good way of doing it in a lot of cases. I don't want to throw shade at that type of reconstruction. It's still okay. I think we have better ways now, and so that's a third or fourth option for most women. And implants are a good way of doing breast reconstruction because silicone implant feels sort of like breast tissue. And so that's good too. So it's very rare that the pectoralis muscle, the chest muscle, is removed during a mastectomy.
Mm.
I think you would say only in really, really invasive advanced breast cancer is that the case. But our sort of options of reconstruction are pretty broad, and it's a pretty long list now. And that's a good thing. And so that, Dominique, is sort of like dovetails into something that I think is important for your audience, which is when a woman comes to see me and we start this conversation, one of the first things I always say is that, look, I want you to take a deep breath.
Mm.
You're in the middle of an incredibly stressful period of your life, and you're
Right.
going to get through it, and we're going to help you get through it. But on your journey, everyone else that you talk to, your medical oncologist, your surgical oncologist, maybe your radiation oncologist, maybe
Mhm.
the geneticist, everyone's going to talk to you about things that really you have to do to get rid of this cancer and survive and live the next 50, 60, 70 years of your life. In my office, this is the office of want to,
Mm.
right? This is
Right.
not an office of have to. This is an office of
Hmm.
want to. And so I'm going to give you a list. I'm going to give you a menu, and I'm going to tell you all the things that are on the menu, and then you're going to pick. And just that freedom during that really stressful time, I think is a great, you know, parlor trick that we have
Yeah.
in plastic surgery. And I think patients really like that. You know, it's very stressful to say, well, you have to have chemotherapy, or you have to have radiation therapy, or you have to have surgery. And of course, those are the facts. A lot of the times, you have to do that to give you the best chance, to give a patient the best chance of surviving this awful disease. But my office is the office of want to. So
Mm.
I like being able to offer those options.
Well, I love that, and I love that you offer truly a woman the power of choice. Probably during a time when she feels like her hands are a bit tied. I mean, I know there's far more discussion involved with a woman and her doctors and protocols, and maybe weighing in some other ideas. But you're right. I mean, for the most part, a woman is pretty much told you need to follow this protocol in order to save your life. So you do feel like your life is in somebody else's hands, so to speak. I'm so curious with the mastectomy and the reconstruction. Is there a window? I mean, does this have to be timed? Are you working in tandem with the oncologist and the other team? Does it need to be done right away, or can you wait? And we're going to hold that question, and I'm going to have you respond on the heels of our sponsors so we can thank them for providing this content for free. And we're back with Dr. Garfein right after this. You know, I'm all about comfort, especially when I'm traveling, running some errands, or even spending long days on my feet. Compression socks, they've always been one of those. Yeah, I know I should, but I hate them. The synthetic ones, they feel like plastic bags on your feet. No breathability, moisture just marinating. And by the end of the day, you kind of smell like a gym locker. And then the ones that are comfy, well, they never actually compress or support the way they're supposed to. I've never made it a full hour in traditional compression socks, let alone the 24 to 48 hours they suggest. So when I found Hollow socks, I was interested. They are the first compression socks that actually do not force you to choose between comfort and performance. These are true performance compression socks. They're amazing for recovery, those really long travel days, or if you're just on your feet all the time. They're made from ultra soft baby alpaca fiber. I mean, they are so comfortable, it should be illegal. They're lightweight, 3 times more breathable, and they've got that graduated compression. So they're nice and snug at the ankle, and then they gently taper up the calf for balanced circulation. Keeps your legs feeling fresh. It helps to reduce soreness and swelling, and you bounce back quicker. I love wearing mine on flights, long flights, especially even after the gym. Sometimes when I record a podcast because I'm sitting around and I could use the compression. And for a limited time, Hollow Socks is having a buy three, get three free sale. Head to hollowsocks.com today to check it out. That's hollowsocks.com for up to 50% off your order. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. You can support our show and tell them we sent you. I don't know about you, but this is the time of year when my tummy gets a little wonky. Sure, we're going to holiday parties or maybe eating out more, and everything feels a little bit off. Holiday celebrations, yeah, they can be fun, but when our gut doesn't feel balanced, that is not fun. So let's be real. Our diets are going to take a hit this time of year. And if you are looking for some digestive support, let me tell you, Ritual has your back. Well, really, they've got your biome. With Symbiotic 3-in-1, it's a powerhouse of clinically studied pre, pro, and postbiotics. They all work together and they support a balanced gut microbiome with daily use. And luckily, Ritual's Black Friday sale is here. I take my probiotic every single day. It's got this wonderful minty essence. You can take it any time of day with a meal, without a meal, doesn't matter. But here's what I notice when I do take it. My tummy's happier. I have fewer digestive issues. I feel so much better, less bloated. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. And Ritual Symbiotic Plus is designed with a delayed release capsule that helps it go to the colon and not the stomach. The colon is an ideal place for probiotics to live and grow. So what do you say? Get your gut going. Support a balanced gut microbiome with Ritual's Symbiotic Plus. My listeners get early access to their Black Friday sale for 40% off your first month at ritual.com/over50. That's ritual.com/over50 for 40% off your first month. Don't miss out on their best sale of the season. As I get older, I have less and less tolerance for stuff. And that includes any kind of bra or shapewear that's going to pinch or bind. Those days are done. You guys hear me talk about Honey Love all the time and for good reason. While recording this podcast, I'm wearing their super popular crossover bra. What a great bra. No wires, amazing support, super comfortable. Here's the shocker. By the end of the day, I kind of forgot I have a bra on. When was the last time you said that? Look, we're about ready to get into some holiday outfits. They sort of need the right foundation. You don't want to see any lines or seams or anything popping out, but you want to feel good. What more confidence do you need than having the perfect bra or underwear that's giving you all the support, all the smoothness underneath your dresses and whatever it is that you're wearing without the tight compression, enhancing your curves and not squishing them. Their shapewear is amazing. They have so much other stuff as well. You really need to check them out. Like I said, that crossover bra, oh my goodness. So treat yourself or somebody you love to Honey Love this holiday season. And right now you can save 20% at honeylove.com/over50. Just use our exclusive link, honeylove.com/over50 to grab your discount. After your order, they're going to ask where you heard about Honey Love. Please support our show. Let them know we sent you. Celebrate the season feeling confident and comfortable with Honey Love. We all keep hearing about how important it is to up our protein intake, especially as we hit the gym more, work on building muscle to be nice and strong as we move through midlife and beyond. And I know, like you, it's probably hard to get in enough protein through our meals every day. So if you're looking for a protein powder, look no further than Clean Simple Eats. You've heard me talk about them a lot on my channel and for good reason. Their protein powder has nothing artificial. They're third-party tested, non-GMO, soy-free, and zero added sugar. And most importantly, they've got 20 grams of grass-fed whey protein isolate in each serving. Also, equally important, the taste. I love the vanilla. I love the chocolate brownie batter. Delicious. You can mix it with your favorite liquid. You can even bake with it. A lot of people do that and they put it in their oatmeal or make muffins with it. What a fantastic way to get your protein in. And in addition to their best-selling protein powders, Clean Simple Eats also has clear protein powder. It's all the hype right now. Their pink Starburst flavor, literally life-changing, tastes like a melted pink Starburst. That way you also get your protein in, but in more of like a flavored water way. Okay, how cool is that? Visit cleansimpleeats.com. Use code Flourishing20 at checkout for 20% off your first order. That's cleansimpleeats.com, code Flourishing20 for 20% off your first order. That's cleansimpleeats.com, code Flourishing20 for 20% off your first order.
So, Dominique, that was a great question. And before I answer it specifically, let me just back up a little bit in the process. So, for a woman who has recently been diagnosed with breast cancer, and you'll see why I'm tying these two things together. One of the most important things that even at great places around the country, and I'm lucky to have a super network of doctors and surgeons who I either trained with or I know from medical school or all over the place. And so I still hear about things in other cities and at other medical centers. I think one of the most important things to remind friends, your listeners, your audience, is if you get diagnosed with breast cancer, make sure there's a plastic surgeon on your team. Now, some people will say, look, I'm getting a lumpectomy. I don't need a plastic surgeon. I'm not even thinking about, my breast surgeon said that I don't need a mastectomy. And friends of mine, friends of my wife's, every other week I get a call and I have this conversation and I say, look, go meet with a plastic surgeon.
Mm.
And sometimes the answer is that I have a small tumor, lumpectomy. I'm not, okay, go meet with a plastic surgeon, because you want to have as many options as you possibly can, right? Everyone does. Everyone
Sure.
wants to have options.
Right.
And so your question was about timing. And
Hmm.
so there are some things that are time dependent. So for example, if you say, so if we go back to the framework of a menu, right? Um,
Hmm.
if someone comes to me and said, look, I'm having a mastectomy and I want to know all my options. I say, okay, we have implant-based reconstruction and we have autologous reconstruction using your own tissue. How do you feel? Let's just start there. And everyone's different. Some people say, look, I want to be out of the hospital and reconstructed as quickly as possible, one and done, same day if possible.
Hmm.
Boom. I have a wedding to go to in 6 weeks. I have to be at the wedding. Okay, maybe an implant is the best thing for you.
Right.
If someone says, hey, I want the reconstruction that is going to feel most like my native breast, I don't care. I will invest any amount of time and effort and operative time in this. I would say, okay, well, let's use your abdominal skin and fat. That's sort of, I think, ultimately the best, all things being equal, quality of reconstruction. Okay. Now, if someone says, hey, and by the way, Dominique, I begin by saying the simplest type of reconstruction is no reconstruction. You don't have to be reconstructed,
Sure.
right? I mean, that's not, it's almost as bad to sort of, in a paternalistic way, like send someone down a path that she may not want to go down as it is to not offer reconstruction. So I always say, like, look, there's a really simple way of doing reconstruction, which is just sewing up the incision and you'll be done. And that is the lowest complication rate and quickest out of the hospital. Now you won't have a breast, and I assume you're here because that's important. And so, okay, we usually pass that one, but I think it's important to say that, just to offer that to people who may be thinking that,
Yeah.
right?
And I guess that's why I asked that question, because I wonder sometimes if a woman does go through a mastectomy and she wants to kind of wait and see what that is. Can I be comfortable with this? Can I feel whole, healed, and healthy like this before
Yep.
I, maybe make that decision? So that's why I was sort of wondering the timing of all of these things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So there are types of reconstruction that are time dependent, and then
Hmm.
there are types that are not. So if you and a lot of it depends on what else is happening with your cancer care, or the
Sure.
patient's cancer care. So if and again, why it's important to have a plastic surgeon as an integral part of this team, speaking to the breast surgeon, speaking to the medical oncologist or the radiation oncologist. If if a patient is likely to get radiation and she says, you know what, I just sort of want to see how this goes, what I will tell her is, okay, but if you have your mastectomy and we don't do anything and you get radiated, we've taken one column of options off the table, and that's implant-based reconstruction.
Is that because the radiation damages the tissue, or what's the reasoning for that?
Well, two things. One is that naturally skin will sort of contract even if you
Right.
don't radiate it. And so that would be okay. You can expand that skin down the road. But if you get radiation as part of your cancer treatment, that really doesn't work. And so the first question is, well, what's the likelihood that you're going to need radiation? Because that's a factor that
Hmm.
is super important. And so I always ask that, and sometimes patients don't know, and sometimes surgeons don't know until the operation. But we've through imaging and experience, and we have a pretty good idea of whether a given patient is likely to need radiation or not. Certainly, there are patients who the breast surgeon will say it's super unlikely that this patient will need radiation, or yeah, she's definitely going to need radiation. So that's the majority, and then there's sort of a middle group. But yeah, so if if radiation is part of the picture, you need to sort of decide, because if you choose not to have any reconstruction, which again is fine, and then down the road, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, say, hey, I feel more whole,
Mm.
reconstructed, we're not using an implant. We can still use your own tissue, but maybe that's more than you wanted. So that's the important question there.
Yeah. Well, and it also emphasizes why it's important to loop a plastic surgeon in the beginning, like you were saying, and have that person as a part of your team so that you can have these conversations early on and map out, okay, if this, then this.
Right.
And, you're not caught by surprise, which I think is a place a woman does not want to find herself, especially having, to ride such a crazy emotional, physical roller coaster that she's going through. I want to talk to you also just about, you touched on this earlier, the advancements in reconstruction. You talked about using the muscle from the back. You said that's used, but not as much anymore. A girlfriend of mine went through DFLAP. I don't know if that's the same thing or if it's, from a different place. She talked
From
about
the
the
belly.
recovery as being brutal. So I know that. I'm just curious, what advancements you're seeing and doing and where surgery is headed.
So let me address your girlfriend first.
Mhm.
So the deep flap, the deep inferior epigastric perforator flap, is abdominally based flap,
Mhm.
skin and fat, sort of think of a tummy tuck area of
Right.
tissue, and it is a refinement of a method of breast reconstruction that's been around for maybe 60 years. And so way back in the 70s and late 60s, we were able to use abdominally based skin and fat, but left it attached to the rectus muscle, which is the six pack muscle, right? One of
Mhm.
your six pack muscles. And and that type of breast reconstruction, which when I was in training, I was still being taught, left the skin attached to the body,
Mhm.
and you use that muscle as a leash, and you rotated the tissue from the belly up to the breast.
Mhm.
And the results were actually very, very good for lots of women, at the cost of sacrificing that abdominal muscle.
Right.
And then microsurgery came around, and we were able to remove tissue totally from the body and then plug it in elsewhere around the body under a microscope. And we used the same skin and fat from the belly and just took the muscle, but you didn't have a leash attached. And so it was a little bit better. And then in the 90s and 2000s, the further refinement, the perforator flap, the deep flap, came along, and that's sort of the most common apex technique today, which is, that's sort of like the Mercedes, right? And
Mhm.
so there are patients who go through that and have exactly the comments that your friend did, which is, oh my God, it's brutal.
Mhm.
I will tell you, and I'll tell your audience, there are also patients who go through that and say it's like a abdominoplasty, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm out to dinner the next night. And so much so that there are places around the country now, and I think this is the future. I really do think this is the cutting edge, where people are sending women who undergo deep flap reconstruction home the next day, and it's sort of under a 23-hour admit. So it's almost the same day. And so that's sort of where we're heading, that this is
Mm.
becoming less painful, less morbid for the patient. And the results are really, really good. So deep flap autologous reconstruction is excellent. The other super important thing for your audience, and I think this is under talked about
Mm.
and is so important, is especially for women with small breasts, they get a diagnosis, their world is turned upside down, and they sit with a breast surgeon, and the breast surgeon says, hey, look, you have a small tumor.
Mhm.
Um, it does not look like it's spread anywhere. you have two options. You can have a lumpectomy and radiation or a mastectomy. And they have equal cure rates and they have equal survival rates, right? Now, when normal people like you and I hear that, and you say, okay, option A is to just remove the cancer, and option B is to remove your whole breast, and cure rate's the same and survival rate's the same. Everyone's like, yeah, that's a no-brainer, right? I just want to remove the cancer, right? Sure. I don't want to remove my whole breast. That's radical. Like there's no way. And I can't tell you the number of sort of friends and sometimes patients who some of the patients don't wind up sitting in my office because they're just down the lumpectomy pathway. And what I think it's so important for women to think about is it may be better aesthetically in terms of self-image, sexuality, feeling of being whole. You may have a better result with a mastectomy and a reconstruction than a lumpectomy and radiation in a small breast. And the analogy I use is that if the tumor and a safe margin is a golf ball, if you take a golf ball out of a honeydew melon, yeah, that's still a honeydew melon. But if you take a golf ball out of an orange, that's not an orange anymore.
Right.
And then you radiate it. And so every week in my office, I see patients who come in 1 year, 5 years, 25 years after a lumpectomy and radiation in a small breast. And that is an almost impossible defect to reconstruct. So much so that I used to, when I was, young and stupid, try to reconstruct it. And now I sort of say, like, look, the best reconstruction I can do is let's do a completion mastectomy and I'll remake your entire breast and it'll look way better than a puckered, small, asymmetric breast with a nipple pointing in the wrong direction. You can't fix that.
Right.
So that is when people ask me what's the most important thing for me to know as I begin this journey, if you have small breasts and you're contemplating a lumpectomy, you really have to talk to a plastic surgeon and at least know what your options are about whole breast reconstruction.
Yeah, well, that's a powerful statement right there, and encouragement for a woman who may find herself in that situation. Not everybody is large breasted, and clearly the impact on a smaller breasted woman is far greater. I have a question about lumpectomy on larger breasted women, and some thoughts on reconstructing that, and is a mastectomy necessary? I'm sorry, a mastectomy and then full reconstruction. We'll talk about that. Boy, this conversation's flying because I'm fascinated. But let's thank our sponsors, and we'll talk about lumpectomy for larger breasted women on the backside of this break. Okay, ladies, I know what you're getting your guy for the holidays. I know, because I got one for my guy, and he's already loving it. So here's my question. Does your man have a wallet that's so thick, big, old, crusty, it's gross looking when you see it, and then when you don't, it has this huge outline in the back of his jeans? Y'all, it is time for a Ridge wallet. If you haven't seen these, you need to. They are beautiful, unique, slim, modern design. They hold up to 12 cards plus cash. They're made with premium materials like aluminum, titanium, and carbon fiber. So they look super cool. I got Vic kind of like a slate gray one with a bit of a sheen to it. Absolutely beautiful. And all Ridge products come with a lifetime warranty. So you're not just giving him a gift that lasts forever. You're also giving him something he's going to use every single day. It's not going to collect dust. It's not going to sit on a shelf. It's a total utilitarian item. And Ridge has over 100,000 5-star reviews. So you're going to feel confident that this is the kind of gift he's going to brag about and actually use. They have other stuff too, like key cases, suitcases, rings, all that stuff. But I'm a huge fan of the wallet. Give him a gift he is actually going to use. Right now, Ridge is having their huge holiday sale. So head to ridge.com to get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've given all year. That's right. Ridge.com for up to 47% off your order during the biggest sale of the year. After your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. We hear a lot about mitochondrial function and how important that is for longevity and good health. And you're probably wondering, well, what can I do to help support the mitochondria? Well, there's this product by Timeline. It's called Longevity Mitopure Gummies, and it's a great way to do just that. They are the first ever longevity gummies powered by Mitopure. It is a delicious, easy way to get proven urolithin A into your system for healthy aging inside and out. You may be asking, well, what's urolithin A? Well, it's got antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, and it's known to improve mitochondrial function, which is crucial for energy production and cellular health. So, some of the things that it can help with: energy at the source, sustained energy, help you feel like yourself again, increasing muscle strength by up to 12% after 16 weeks. I mean, maybe you've tried all the trends and you're still feeling tired, foggy, or off your game. Time to go deeper, time to dig into the mitochondria. I've been taking these now for about 2 months. I feel great. They taste absolutely delicious. I take 2 of them any time of day. They fit perfectly into my routine. And think about it, good health is kind of like home maintenance. Eventually, things will break down if you don't do the cleanup and repair. Our body does make less energy as we get older, but now we have an opportunity to recharge the batteries. So if you want to stay strong and energized now and as you age, then you have to try Mitopure gummies. My friends at Timeline are offering 20% off just for my listeners. Head to timeline.com/flourishing to get started. That's timeline.com/flourishing. Your cells will thank you. All right, let's talk about style for a minute. Why? Because it's fun. And isn't getting dressed effortless something worthy of a conversation? Revolve is a go to for me. It fits every season of life, whether it's hosting, attending an event, sneaking away on a vacation, you name it, even podcast outfits. I just ordered a couple of capri pants you're going to see on this show by Super Down. You guys, they're amazing. Black and white stretch. What great fit. A vest in black, a long evening gown in a stretch. I'm all about stretch these days, and sort of a grayish blue. Absolutely beautiful. There's something for everybody. And here's what I appreciate about Revolve. Shopping there is so easy. Their curated edits mean I don't have to dig for looks. I can click night out, vacation, special events. Suddenly I got a whole mood board. I love the recommended for you feature because they get my vibe. And new arrivals every day, including sizing from extra, extra small to 4X, and so many other great brands like Norma Kamali, Free People, Lovers and Friends, all in one place. So whether it is a weekend away, a big night out, or just a little style refresh, your dream wardrobe is just one click away. Head to revolve.com/flourishing, shop my edit, and take 15% off your first order with code FLOURISHING. Fast 2-day shipping, easy returns. It's literally the only place you need to shop from. That's revolve.com/flourishing to shop my favorites and get 15% off your first order with code FLOURISHIng. Offer ends November 24th, so happy shopping.
So for women with large breasts and hopefully a small tumor that you find early, there are lots of options, and they're really good. So over the last 10 or 15 years, this subfield of oncoplastic surgery has sort of come up. And what that basically means is that a plastic surgeon will work with a breast surgeon to, do a reduction type operation where part of the reduction is taking out the tumor. And these are often really, really satisfying operations because you can take a woman with a very large breast, and if she's, has had kids or just had years, that breast is probably lower than she would like. Mm-hmm. And so to say, okay, look, we're going to get rid of the tumor, take plenty of margin, and we're just going to do a breast reduction, which is a really common, really successful operation that most women are incredibly happy with. And there are lots of different ways to do it. So really doesn't matter where the tumor is. The only exception being maybe right behind the nipple where that would make it difficult. But But oncoplastic reductions are super for women who have a larger breast. Even a mastectomy, just a lift,
Hmm.
is something that's possible. So again, there are lots of different scenarios, but the key is having a plastic surgeon on your team who can talk with your breast surgeon and say, okay, look, let's figure out what this woman's first oncologic goals are. Well, we have to cure her of this cancer. That is, the sine qua non of
Hmm.
what we're doing here. Nothing trumps that. But after that, what are her goals? What do we have to work with? Oh, she's had an abdominoplasty. Okay, well, we can't do a deep flap. She's already used that tissue before. So you begin the conversation, and that's a really fun part of doing what we do is giving people options. And Dominique, there are so many good ways of doing breast surgery and doing breast reconstruction these days that we're almost always able to find a good solution for a patient.
Yeah, it seems like there are so many more options
Yeah.
available these days, which is just music to my ears to hear for women who find themselves in this situation. And to just be clear, mastopexy, which is the lift, right?
Yep.
That would then be done to both breasts because you
Yep.
obviously want symmetry
Yep.
between. So you want the patient to not only know that her cancer is gone, but she's symmetrical and even on both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about okay. So we clearly have so many more options available. I want to touch on the other passion of yours, and that's accessibility to all of this, which requires information, being informed, doing your research, and then, of course, the fun I word, which is insurance. So, I want to talk about reconstruction for women. A lot of them may not think that it's on the table for them. And you have been an advocate to make sure that this is accessible for women. So talk about that first. And obviously I can tell why you're passionate about it, but how did this start?
So when I was a resident up in Boston at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, and a surgeon I was a resident with is named Caprice Greenberg, and Caprice is a brilliant surgeon, and she's now chairman of her department, and she. As a researcher during her residency, wrote a paper on racial and ethnic and socioeconomic disparities in breast reconstruction.
Hmm.
And I read the paper, and it was a really well conducted study when she was at the Dana Farber. And in the paper, the thing that really caught my eye was that if you're rich and white and are college educated, your likelihood of receiving reconstruction was like nationally like 40 or 50%, which in and of itself sounds low, but it just shows you that not every woman is a candidate for it or chooses it.
Sure.
Okay, that's not what caught my eye. What caught my eye was that if you were poor and black and not college educated, your likelihood of getting reconstruction was 7%.
Mm.
Okay. And so the obvious thought to everyone is, okay, well, that must be the I word, right? That must be insurance.
Sure.
So none of us would have been alone in thinking that. And so in 1998, before Caprice wrote her study, Senator Alphonse D'Amato from New York authored a bill in the US Senate called the Women's Health and Cancer Rights Act, a really important piece of legislation. And it covered a lot of stuff, but one of the foundational elements of it was that all insurances, government insurance, private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, everything had to cover all reconstructive procedures related to breast cancer care. And
Mhm.
everyone thought, and I would have thought too, that will totally solve this problem. If
Sure.
you guarantee coverage, if a woman is on Medicaid and has breast cancer, and you say, look, Medicaid has to cover deep flap surgery, great, boom, no problem. What it did to impact those disparate rates was almost nothing, right?
Mm.
And so Caprice thought this was a really interesting question, And so she dug into it a little bit more. And what she found, one of the conclusions of her paper was that the single greatest predictor of a woman getting reconstructive surgery was not insurance or where she lived or her plastic surgeon was, and you touched on it in your question, the single greatest predictor was the breast surgeon mentioning to her in the consult that reconstruction was an option.
Right. Information.
So I read it and I thought, oh my God, that is amazing. And so I
Yep.
left Boston and I moved back down to New York, and I was about to start my job at Montefiore. And I was having dinner one night with a friend of mine from college who at the time, I guess, had just been on the New York City Council, a good friend of mine named Gifford Miller. And Gifford said, oh, you're starting to work at Montefiore in the Bronx. What are you excited about? And I said, well, I think Montefiore is an amazing place, and I'm really looking forward to working there. And I'm interested in breast reconstruction and specifically in this issue of disparities. Mm-hmm. And I told him about Caprice's paper, and he said, okay, well, that's interesting. How are you going to
bridge the gap,
move the needle? Like,
yeah.
what are you going to do about it, smart guy?
Right.
And so, I was young and stupid and idealistic. And I was like, well, Gifford, here's my idea. I'm going to go talk in churches and in beauty parlors, and I'm this grassroots. And he's like, that is completely dumb. That won't work at all. And I said, why? He's like, it's just not going to work. And I was like, okay, well, what should I do? He said, well, if you want to, if that's true, you should make it a law that breast surgeons have to tell women that they have this as an option. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about getting a law
legislation.
I'm a doctor, damn
right.
it. And he's like, well, Montefiore is a very, politically connected place. Go up there and try to figure it out. So I did. I got introduced to a guy named Don Ashkenaz, who was, I think, in his 80s at that time. And he had always been very socially active. And Don sort of took me under his wing and introduced me to some folks up in Albany, and we got the law passed in New York State. And that was sort of the first of, I think there are about 30 different states now have laws that basically say the same thing, which is that you have to at least tell women that it's an option. Now, it has not had the effect that any of us wanted. It's improved the rates of disparity, but it hasn't fixed it. And that sort of speaks to the complexity of the problem. And I'll tell you why. And again, for your audience, this is sort of actionable data. If you get diagnosed with breast cancer and you go to a great hospital, and maybe you're in Manhattan or maybe you're in Westchester, and it's a well-heeled hospital. There are 38 plastic surgeons there and 22 breast surgeons, and they're just totally set up to take care of commercially insured people. And when you sit down with your breast surgeon, she'll say, I work with 7 different plastic surgeons who all do microsurgery, and 2 of them have offices down the hall today. We'll get you right in. Access. If you go to a city hospital in this great city of ours, and I'm not casting dispersions on them, there's no plastic surgeon on staff. And that plastic surgeon who comes in for emergencies also has a private practice, and they're there every other Tuesday, and blah, 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 blah. And it is just so hard to get to a plastic surgeon. And what happens is the breast surgeon says, look, I have this woman who's 34 years old, was just diagnosed with breast cancer. She has 2 kids. She's a single mom. She has to get back to work. I physically cannot coordinate reconstructive options for this patient in a time that will be commensurate with delivering good cancer care. It's just not going to happen, right? So that it's not that the breast surgeons who are taking care of poor women are bad people. It's that they're not set up to offer something, so they don't. And I don't really blame them for that. What we all have to do is make sure when you talk to your representatives that you say, hey, this is a basket of care, right? And so if you offer breast cancer care at fill in the blank,
Hmm.
Bronx Lebanon Hospital, Harlem Hospital, wherever, you have to make plastic surgery available. And so that means that the hospital has to say, okay, we have to employ someone whose job it is to be responsive to these patients who need expeditious plastic surgery for breast cancer. And that's a tough nut to crack, Dominique. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that we haven't succeeded in yet, and we're still fighting for.
Right. Well, I certainly applaud your efforts because you have seen the gap that you're trying to bridge and you know it's there. I guess I'm going to answer my own question by asking this, but in order for insurance to then cover the mastectomy following the breast cancer treatment, does it have to be in hospital? She can't go, I don't know, out of network? I mean, how does all of this work? Because, there's the whole in network, out
Yeah,
of network. How do you get coverage?
yeah. So it's funny. I, it's not a bad question at all. And so what a lot of times happens, and I see more than a few patients like this every year, where they'll come in, and again, there's for a lot of reconstruction, there's not a time there's no time pressure, and
Hmm.
so if again, the most important thing, get your cancer taken care of. Okay, in an ideal world, or even not an ideal world, in a world that we would all imagine for everyone living in this country of ours, you get reconstructed, or at least have the option of reconstruction at the time of your mastectomy. If for whatever reason that doesn't happen, there's not a plastic surgeon available, whatever extraneous stuff is going on, you can always come to another plastic surgeon
Hmm.
at some point in the future, and insurance will cover that, right? There's no time limit on even if you have Medicare or Medicaid or commercial insurance or whatever. If you're having surgery related to breast cancer care, insurance will cover that.
At
And
100%, or what's the
at,
percentage?
well, whatever your insurance, I mean, it's one. I'm biased at Montefiore, so and part of I'm going to give a plug for our hospital.
Mm.
I've been there for 18 years, and my partner Oren Tepper and I have a cosmetic surgery office in Tribeca, and
Mhm.
so I have sort of two lives, and so what I love about working at Montefiore is that in 18 years, I have never had to ask whether someone has insurance, doesn't have insurance, 100%. It has never been part of my life as a doctor, and I love that,
Mm.
and it is so great. And so I have no idea. What I know is that if you come to Montefiore, not to plug our shop, but like if you come to Montefiore, like no one gets balance billed. If you have Medicaid, we bill Medicaid.
Mhm.
If you have Medicare, we bill Medicare. And so and Dominique, I sort of think that's the way medicine should be practiced. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's sort of like it's sort of like the good way of doing things.
Well, you bring up such a good point, and I used to live in Houston. The Texas Medical Center is world renowned. People
Yeah,
would fly
yeah,
from all over the world to come and receive care for the very reasons that you just pointed out. And sometimes you may need to get out of your community to get access to the best doctors and the best care possible.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I love to leave women with kind of actionable to-do lists. So if you could just kind of walk us through, I know we've touched on all of these throughout this conversation, but for a woman who is diagnosed with breast cancer, kind of give us the punch list of things that she should do and that should be on her list of questions to ask and steps to take.
Yeah. So first, as always, take a deep breath.
Mm.
You're going to be okay. You have to stay positive and recognize that it's going to be incredibly stressful. You're going to get through it. Call on help. Time to rally the troops, circle the wagons, whatever you want to say. But you're going to get through it. Take a deep breath.
Mhm.
The second thing is get a yellow pad. So I can't tell you the number of patients and friends that I've talked to in these circumstances, and the mind is just spinning and going
Swirling.
100 miles an hour. And so I said, get a yellow pad,
Mhm.
write everything down, and start making lists. So pros and cons, priorities, obligations, preferences, like, because the more disordered you are, the harder it is to stratify and make choices. And
Mm-hmm.
in breast cancer care, more than almost any disease process I can think of, there are trade-offs. So
Sure.
lumpectomy and radiation versus mastectomy, lumpectomy and radiation versus mastectomy with reconstruction, prophylactic mastectomy, implant. I mean, lots of nuance, right? And so it is impossible under the stress of the situation to keep all those things clear in your head without writing them down.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible for me, at least. So,
Sure.
so I tell, take a deep breath, get a yellow pad, and then put together a team and make sure you ask to be put in touch with everyone. Talk to everyone. Talk to a plastic surgeon, a radiation oncologist. You're going to talk to a breast surgeon. Get your team together before you make any definitive decisions. And then this always sort of surprises patients. And I'm a big believer in this. I tell everyone, get a second opinion.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you're bringing that up.
I tell everyone, you know,
Yep.
I sit with patients and I'm like, look, this is what I would do. I'm going to give you the names of 3 people I would send my wife to for this.
Mm-hmm.
Call them. I want you to go see at least one of them, and I'd love you to see 2 of them.
Bravo.
And they say, well, I am worried that if I go to them, you're going to, and I was like, don't worry. I'm plenty busy. I'll be fine. Like,
Right.
there's no pride of ownership here. Like, I want people to be comfortable. I think I'm a very good surgeon. I think I'm a very good doctor. I'm okay. I want people, because only one of 2 things is going to happen. I tell them, I
Right.
said, that person is going to agree with me and you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be like, great. Garfein was right. Or that person's going to say, I totally disagree with him. I would offer you this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have another option. Great.
Yep.
But I think second opinions are incredibly, incredibly important.
I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. And I say that all the time. I talk about women's care in midlife and hormonal care. And I can't even tell you how many times I've encouraged women, if you're not getting the answers that you need, go somewhere else,
Yeah.
interview doctors. There are many, many, many out there. It's not one and done. So thank you for bringing that up. And I wouldn't be a responsible journalist if I didn't button up this podcast with the question about implants. You can't scroll through a TikTok feed or an Instagram feed without seeing all these women posting about explant surgery. They're getting their implants removed. And I understand the aesthetic is much smaller now, but many of them are concerned about, potential autoimmune issues or this or that. Coming from your perspective as a plastic surgeon who deals with implants in both elective and reconstructive surgery, what are your thoughts there?
Well, it's an incredibly important issue. So I'll tell you things that I think I know,
Hmm.
and I'll tell you the things that I think I and we don't know.
Hmm.
Implants have been around for a long time and they're used a lot. So what does that mean? That means that we have the opportunity as a society, as a medical establishment, to look for really unusual or infrequent events and have pretty high fidelity, uh, pretty high confidence that we will find them if they're there, right? So what that means is that if about 600,000 cosmetic implants are placed every year, give or take, and about 200,000 implants are placed for reconstruction every year. And so, and these devices have been used for decades. And so I can say with confidence that they are safe in the vast majority of people. Okay. Now, that I know that. So if my wife or my sister or a relative said, "Hey, I want breast implants. What do you think?" I would say they're safe.
Right.
Um, are there women who have, whether you call it breast implant associated illness?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think so. I, and I think we don't know what causes it. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know that it's the same thing in everyone. Is there a type of lymphoma associated with breast implants? Yeah, for sure. I know that. It's associated with implants that we tend not to use anymore that are older
The
class.
textured ones, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a real thing? Yeah. And we were able to find it
Mm-hmm.
because so many women get implants. I mean, only a couple of hundred cases have been described. It's not common, but we're able to find it and associate it with the implant. And so implants are safe, relative to all other things that we talk about, like your glucose level, your lipid level, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, your blood pressure, all these things probably are more closely correlated with disease or lack of longevity or whatever. But so implants are safe. There are some women who definitely have symptoms that they associate with their implants. You have to remember, Dominique, it's impossible to prove that something doesn't exist. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't prove that implants don't cause something. I
Right.
can only, right, that as part of the scientific method, you can't prove that an implant doesn't
Yeah,
cause.
you can't prove a negative.
I can only prove that it does cause
Mm-hmm.
something. And so you, implants have not been shown to be associated with autoimmune disease or fibromyalgia or any of these things. It doesn't mean that it's not true, but we just can't prove it.
Right. Interesting. Well, and I appreciate that. And I also want to just quickly add, when you consult a woman who chooses to do a reconstruction with an implant, I guess it depends on her age, but typically, how long are implants lasting, and will she need a follow up surgery?
Great question. So whether someone comes to me for cosmetic augmentation or reconstruction, if we're putting an implant in, I say, look, there's no expiration date on this implant. I see patients every week who will come in. Some of them are mine, some my patients, some of them are not my patients. They say, look, I've had implants for 25 years. I had a cosmetic breast augmentation in 2000.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, why'd you come in? And she'll say, I just thought I should have them replaced. And, if they're soft and there's no capsule around them and they're not
Hmm.
ruptured, I'm like, no, why? Now, that being said, if I do a cosmetic augmentation on a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, part of the informed consent process, or in reconstruction, I'll say, look, you're 35 years old or you're 45 years old. You should plan, when you're trying to figure out the calculus of whether I should have my own tissue or an implant. Part of that informed consent is you should plan on having one or two more operations on this breast. You may not, but you should plan on it. So if they say, well, give me a length of time, I'm like, well, again, it's highly dependent. If you form a capsule, one thing. If you don't form a capsule, another. If it ruptures in a car accident, one thing. If it doesn't, another thing. I say 15 to 20 years. And if you press me on that, I'm not going to have a good answer for why it's 15 to 20 years. I just think it's something that is in the future, but likely to occur.
Right. And is there a greater risk of rupture? Because I know a woman who's been through breast cancer. Doctors tend to require annual mammograms, if not biannual. Does the mammogram itself compromise the implant?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is always a concern. And I have to tell you, I've never, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I don't know if a study has been done to show that a mammography impacts implants. My guess is going to be that it doesn't. And again, I'll tell you why I think that is from the cosmetic experience. We have millions of women in this country who've had implants placed for cosmetic augmentation who get yearly mammograms. And if the implants really made people sick or they really ruptured during mammography, we wouldn't be using them, right? I mean,
Hmm.
right? We wouldn't be using them. And so I think they're really safe devices.
Okay.
Fortunately.
I'm just asking the questions I know a woman's thinking.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
least this
yeah,
woman,
yeah,
I think of a lot of questions.
yeah.
That's my nature. But this has been such a fruitful interview, and I am just so appreciative of your passion, your work, your desire to get legislation on the books to at least provide this information for women, the access to it. And I really, really hope that this encourages a woman who finds herself in this space to know that there is an accompaniment to all of this, and it can end in her choice. Like you said in the beginning, you provide the menu and she gets to decide what she's going to order. But Dr. Evan Garfein, what a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Really inspiring conversation with Dr. Garfein. And by the way, we'll provide links to website, social pages, anywhere you can find him should you need to and want to reach out. But I really appreciate that conversation and just informing women in all areas. And we're going to button up today's Over 50 and Flourishing with a dear Dominique. And this question comes in. It is, why did you stop pellets and go to cream and patches for your hormone replacement therapy? I've been on pellets and I switched and wondering why you did. I went to injections for testosterone. I am now a breast cancer survivor, so HRT is off the table per my oncologist, even though I am still considering testosterone. Thanks. So, the answer to that, and I recently did a social post on my HRT routine. And yes, it has changed. And the reason for the change is I started off doing estrogen pellets. I tried a testosterone pellet because at that time my testosterone was low. What I found with the pellets is that in me, and granted, everybody's body is different, which is why. To Dr. Garfein's point, it's not one size fits all, and it's important to sometimes see a variety of medical practitioners to find the right thing for you. I found with the pellets that the hormone levels in me spiked. So I got a lot of estrogen in the beginning and then it plateaued and it dipped. So I didn't feel a consistent dosing of estrogen during that 3-month period. So I talked to my doctor about it and she said, well, you don't have to do this. It's one option. Another option would be the patch. And she's like, I'm doing the patch. I'll show you what it looks like. And she showed it to me and she said, you just, stick it on your hip or abdomen, and you change it out once every 3.5, 4 days. So basically twice a week. So I tried that. And there are different dosages as well. And eventually dialed in my right dose. I felt much more consistent with the hormone in my system. So I was asymptomatic basically. I didn't have the night sweats anymore and some of the things that I had been dealing with. So for me, the patch was a more consistent form of dosing. There are, to your point, so many different delivery systems of testosterone, creams, gels, injections, compounded through the pharmacy. So conversations are critical. And listening to your body is really, really important. Not, what I do may not be right for the woman next to me, but I believe to Doctors Garfein's point, talk to your doctor, talk about options. If you're not getting enough information or you feel like maybe there's more out there, go seek another person, get another expert's advice until you're kind of compiling enough information to be educated and to make the best decisions for yourself. I believe that, we've come a long way clearly when it comes to breast cancer and reconstruction. We've come a long way when it comes to HRT. And I've even had some wonderful doctors talk about options for women who have been through breast cancer. So there are options there too. Um, it just may look different from another woman's, but just get the information out there. There's so much, and there's so much to be had, and I'm so grateful to be a woman in midlife during this time of life when there is access, information, and treatment available. But thank you so much for your question. I appreciate it. If you found this podcast informative, please give it a thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment below. We always appreciate those. And if you're listening, wherever you listen, whether it's Apple, Spotify, I would love it if you would take the time to rate, review, subscribe, and share Over 50 and Flourishing to a woman in your life. Who knows? There could be a friend, a mother, a daughter, anybody who could be going through this journey right now and could truly benefit from Dr. Garfein's information. So thank you, love you, appreciate you, and I will see you next week.